Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the Public Tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to the continuation of the public meeting number 10 of today, Friday, September 1st, 2023. I would like to give a special welcome to the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Ms. Sylvia Jacobs, the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, Mr. Arthur Lambrix, and their respective support staff. We have established a quorum of 10 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the following members: MP William Marlin, and notice of lateness from MP Peterson. Does any other member have any other notification? I see MP Grisha. MP Grisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasant good morning to you and welcome back, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the Prime Minister, the Minister of TIAT, and support staff. Good morning to those listening and viewing online, and good morning to everyone. Mr. Chairman, just for the people's attention, this meeting was called November 14th, 2022, and in December 16th, Minister Otley came and we started the first round where we posed questions, and it was then adjourned in December. And then later on in February 2022, the Minister of TIAT came and answered the questions in the first round, and I think we stopped at clarifications. Today is September 1st, Mr. Chairman. It's been 10 months. This meeting has been ongoing. It's way beyond the urgent request, which was supposed to be at least called within, per the rules of order, within a month, or within a week's time of last year. With that, Mr. Chairman, I just want to state for the record that it's oddly a little a waste of time. After 10 months, the urgency is completely gone, and I'd like to know if it's possible then, Mr. Chair, if the Minister of TIAT can, hopefully, I'm assuming he will have some introductory remarks. In his introductory remarks, a little elucidation as to where the deadlines are, if it's still the same, has it changed, and if so, why? Because I'm not going to pose questions in this meeting in the second round to wait another 3 months for answers. So if he could, at least through you, Mr. Chairman, give us a little elucidations of where the deadlines are, if they're still the same, just an update there. If he can give us a little feedback as where he stands with all the firing, resigning that's been going on. Does it have your attention? Through you, Mr. Chair. And also lastly, based on the motion that I supported in May 2020, 3 years ago, and 4 ministers of TIATs later, if he can also give us an update on the execution of said motion. If there's a deadline, if he's going to execute it, how far is he with that? Those 3 things would be great. I'll be grateful for those answers, Mr. Chair, but I am not, in good conscience, going to pose questions in the second round to wait another 3 months. These are urgent matters. I think the minister can, off the bat, give us a little elucidation on what's going on in his introductory remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten. The next person I see is MP George Pantaplet. MP George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the chair, my colleagues, Parliament, of course, Khalifi, our Prime Minister, Sylvia Jacobs, and also our Minister of TIAT, Mr. Lambrix, and of his support staff, Mr. La Cruz, and those that are sitting and viewing. Mr. Chairman, my notification will be kind of in the form of mostly an appeal. I've been contemplating whether to say this for quite some time now, but I believe, based on, again, my experience this morning, I have to do so. I am making an appeal, Mr. Chairman, through you to the public or the persons who are doing this on a frequent basis. They're parking on the curves, Mr. Chairman, and you have to come almost out in the middle of the road in order to make the turn that you have to make. So Like this morning again, I'm coming out of the corner, and then because this person parked right in the corner, I couldn't see anything down at the burying ground at the foot of town. By the time if the car hadn't stopped, he would have hit me already on the right-hand side. So I'm appealing to persons, when you're parking your vehicle, make sure you don't park in such a way that can hinder the sight of the person who is driving on the road also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George Pantaflit. Thank you all for your notifications. I would like to adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes for some technical uploads. And the meeting is adjourned for 15 minutes. Welcome back. We have as agenda point for this public meeting, discussion on the general reconstruction of the Princess Juliana International Airport, PJIA, under IS/188/2022-23, dated November 14, 2022. MP Christopher Emmanuel, MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten, and MP R.A. Peterson requested this meeting. We go over to the agenda point. On November 14, 2022, Parliament received a letter IS/188/2022-23 from MP C.T. Emmanuel, MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten, and MP R.A. Peterson with the request that an urgent public meeting of the Parliament be convened to discuss the above-mentioned agenda point. The presence of the Prime Minister and the Minister of TIAT was also requested. The meeting was convened on December 16, 2022, during which the then acting Minister of TIAT, Mr. Omar Otley, gave a PowerPoint presentation. After that, in accordance with the speakers list, members of the Parliament were given the opportunity to pose questions to the ministers in the first round. The meeting continued on February 22, 2023, in which the Minister of TIAT answered the questions in the first round, which was followed by clarification and answers. Today, on the request of Minister of TIAT, he has a PowerPoint presentation, and I would like to give the floor to the Minister of TIAT. Minister, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, MPs. Good morning, colleague PM, and my support staff, and those listening in the media. Thank you, MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten, for asking me to clarify some stuff with the timelines and what is going on at the airport. As you can see, I have it's a presentation. It's more of a report that we now are receiving monthly from the airport, which I'm glad to let you know that I will be sharing with Parliament monthly. So this is the first one from July that will be shared. August will be coming within a few days, and every month after we will be receiving those, which has in all the information basically of what we also know with what the passenger movements are, with where the construction is on the airport, main timelines and milestones. So as the question was asked about the reconstruction, the departure hall is still set to be finished in Q3 of 2023, and it has been announced that the 1st of November we will be having that opening. The check-in area is still unplanned for 2024 January, and September at the end, the final, will be finished at the end of Q2. We do have a temporary facility, if you look when you pass the airport now, that is being erected, which is going to be for the arrival hall. This is to make sure that the full construction can continue to keep everything on track and not have any noise hindrance for the employees that work in the arrival hall, and keep the passenger satisfaction at a good level. No foreseen anything has come up to say that we will have any more delays. Everything is still on track. There's also more business results also that will be published in this report that you will be privy to, so you can see. Also pictures of what the airport looks like on the inside, new machinery that has already been put in, and basically all the updates that we would need. That is it for the information on the reconstruction. If you do have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Today, the meeting will continue in the second round, in which the members can pose questions to the Minister of TIAT for maximum of 10 minutes. MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, is that the response I'm going to be receiving through you, Mr. Chairman, from the minister regarding my questions in the notification, or is he planning to respond to me in an introductory? Because I asked some other questions that were not clear.
Sorry, I think there was also one asked about the motion.
Minister, your mic. Yeah.
Sorry. MP, I think you also asked a question about the motion 2020. That's the one you're referring to. I do have it here, but if you allow me, I will answer it. If there's any questions in the second round that are being asked by anyone, I will answer those. Just a few minutes to finish up that response to you. That about the motion that you had in 2020, I have it here. I'm just reviewing something still, and I will respond later on in the, if it's okay in the meeting. Or I can send those in writing also to you if you'd like.
Mr. Chairman, this is a public meeting. I haven't posted it in the second round. I just asked for an update prior to the round. So I don't know if the minister is not, if he could put it in writing, not a problem, but that's why I specifically asked it in the notification round. It has not been, the question has not been posed in the round. So I don't know how he's going to answer me in the round, and I didn't post it in the round, post the question in the round. I asked for an update in his introductory remark. This is not an official question within the agenda, within the first or second round. You understand what I'm saying, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman?
for this, I would request, Minister, how long would you need to have that answer before we continue?
Okay, so an update on some of the questions that were asked and were not answered. One of them was about the attention, I believe, with the hiring and firing at the airport. As part of the good governance, corporate governance, we have to follow certain procedures. Of course, it has my attention, definitely. It has the whole attention of COM, but there's so much we can do with stepping into the situation directly. So we have reached out to the holding board, which is dealing with the supervisory board, and they are dealing with the operating board. I have not received a full update from them yet, but we are still on top of them to make sure that gets done. The motion from what I see, there was a resolve that there was a request to government to find out about the procedures and concrete performance plan providing no force majeure for the reconstruction of the airport. So basically, this explains that the airport is still basically on track. The performance plan and the task, the procurement, the pre-construction, the mold, these are all, like you mentioned, these are all passed already, and we're past that point. The government should consider using this plan. There was also one about the evaluation of the CEO. To my knowledge, there was one evaluation done. I have not seen a copy of it, but I have requested it. As soon as I have that information, I will then, in writing, if I'm allowed to do so, provide that to you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your update on that point. Now we will straight go into the second round, for which the list of members of parliament who have already done in the first round will have 10 minutes. And according to the speakers list, the first question is, the first MP is MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten. MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be very brief. As I stated before, this is a complete and utter waste of the people's time 10 months later. I just have 3 questions, and I guess I'll have to wait, I hope not, another 2-3 months for the response. But indeed, for the record, I would like to have, even if it has to be sent to us in confidential, the evaluation of Mr. Mingo. And I keep hearing an MP in here referring about the evaluation. If that's the evaluation that the MP is referring to, then let's see it. And the contract of Brian Mingo, it has been extended. I would like to know for the record, how long has it been extended for? If it's been extended, if not, some elucidations there. I know his contract was supposed to end this year. He's still there, so what's the status there? And the temporary facility that has now been erected, how much is that? What's the expense surrounding that? And when exactly will that, I'm not sure if it's written. I read that presentation, that 4-page presentation briefly. It's not clear. The facility will be operational when exactly, and how much does it cost? And I think that's it for now, Mr. Chairman. That's all I'd like to hear.
Thank you, MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten. The next speaker is MP Emmanuel. MP Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Good morning to you, Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Minister, Prime Minister, support staff, my colleagues, and everyone who's listened to us by whichever means. I just have a few questions for the Minister. Minister, I don't know if it's true or not, but a rumor have been circulating concerning discrimination on the airport with the Turkish contractors down on the airport and the local contractors or the local boys who are working there too as well, where it was made mention that the bathroom facilities cannot be used by both individuals. So the Turkish individuals have a specific bathroom that they can use for themselves, right? And the local boys or the local contractors are not allowed to use that same bathroom. The director, Mr. Mingo, came out and said, well, yeah, you know how it is with local people and all kind of different kind of people down there. So they have separate bathrooms for this one and separate bathroom for that one. I have it on recording. I can leave you hear it too, where he did say that. So I would like to know if you're aware of it and if it is true really, because he made mention of it. Have you had a discussion with him? Has it been taken up? Because it was said that, yes, the Turkish individuals that work on the airport and the local boys are not allowed to use the same bathrooms. They're not allowed to use the same bathrooms. In addition to that, it was also made mention that the new commercial manager has resigned or tendered his resignation. Can we get an update on that? The gentleman that took that position about 2-3 months ago has tendered his resignation. If true, can we get an update on that? And do you have any idea if the airport will be looking for a local replacement? And seeing that that is the case, can we get an update also on what is happening with Ms. Jack? What is happening with Ms. Jack Audrey in terms of being back there? If she's working, if she's not working, she's receiving her salary. If she's not receiving her salary down on the airport. Also, Mr. Chairman, it was made mention that November 1st, I believe, is when the new arrival hall will be open, departure hall. Would it be open to the general public in terms of usage or open just for people to review, to take a look at it, to see what it all looks like? Or is it the case that it will be open for the general public for usage? Second to that, the other thing that I'm questioning also is this erection of the tent, moving the individuals back outside. Can we get sort of an explanation for the reason for that, how long it will be, who all will be in there, and what's the cost of it too as well? Also, Mr. Chairman, I would like to know, can we get an update, detailed, on what exactly, in terms of expertise, we are receiving from Schiphol? I thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Christopher Emmanuel. The next person is MP Bryson. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Secretary General, my colleague members of Parliament, the Prime Minister and Minister of TIAT with us today, the support staff, and those viewing by other forms of media. Mr. Chairman, yes, the most important thing I would want to know is, of course, when is this airport finally going to be completed? We are a tourism destination, and the two most important points that matter when it comes to our tourism product in terms of being able to come here are the Port of St. Martin and the airport that is branded as SXM Airport. To see these, this sort of timeline, am I to understand correctly that by the end of the second quarter 2024, we should be fully operational again? I think that's the crux of what everyone wants to know. Okay, we know, and I think it's good that we've gotten to the point where the departure area, which also then creates space for the check-in area and so on, that those are that will be by November 1st. That is excellent news. But the overall completion of the airport is important also for two reasons mainly. One, of course, because we need the airport to be completed, but from a strategic perspective, we also need to know and time the completion date of our airport with our current efforts for route development. What I mean by that is most airlines tend to plan their route development, their strategies, their amount of airlift 8 to 9 months out. So if we're looking at second quarter 2024, that means that now is around the time when airlines are going to start planning how many flights they're going to be sending to St. Martin. And one of the issues that we've had is that St. Martin is, believe it or not, if you look at the numbers in terms of load factors, in extremely high demand. That might seem like a good thing, and it is something that is appreciated that we have high demand, but with that high demand has come low supply of airlift, which has now resulted in the price of tickets going up much higher than they were before. A lot of people thought that might have been tied to rising fuel prices, which did contribute. But the main contributing factor to the high prices of getting a ticket to come to St. Martin is the lack of supply to St. Martin, the number of seats coming into St. Martin on aircraft. I believe that I would like to hear from the minister the efforts related to route development in particular. I would say one, the overnight Miami flight. I think that is a very important flight for St. Martin that has been there before COVID, since Irma. We never had that flight over. That flight was a very important flight for St. Martin because it was the earliest time you can get into the United States and it was the latest time you could get out of the United States. What I know in my time as tourism director that was a challenge with that flight is the cost of overnighting their crew. And the proposal we had at that time was to do a marketing agreement with them or a operational agreement with them rather, where the government as part of that agreement would work with the local hotelier and cover the cost of the overnight crew. I think that is a very reasonable thing because first of all, that is money going into our local economy. So it's not money that you're sending to the airline. The government can make its agreement with the hotel. And secondly, the amount of throughput you would have because someone would be able to catch a late flight into St. Martin and connect here, or they can overnight in St. Martin and take that early flight to the United States. It also allows for weekend flights because somebody can leave on a Friday evening and come back on a Monday afternoon from the United States and back on Monday to the United States. It's a very important one, and I would like the minister to please take that into consideration. The other key route, in my opinion, is the expansion of the Atlanta route with Delta. I think that Delta is a very interesting strategic partner for us because, first of all, Delta main hub is ATL Airport, which is the busiest airport in the United States of America. Interestingly enough, that is also the strategic partner of the Schiphol Group. So I don't think you should get no resistance to saying that St. Martin and our airport is going to work very closely with Atlanta Airport on many ways in terms of exchange of flights through their partner Delta, in terms of technical support. We really need to explore the connection between Atlanta and St. Martin as much as possible. There's many opportunities there, and I would like an update from the minister on his interactions with Delta. In addition to that, for route development, there's another aspect that has hindered route development for a long time, which is a somewhat debated topic, but officially by the Parliament of St. Martin in terms of a motion passed. That is the issue of pre-clearance. We have had a motion that was passed, I believe, in 2021 related to U.S. pre-clearance and an update from the U.S. Pre-Clearance Committee. My question would be, is that committee still in place within the Ministry of TIAT? What are the plans for this? I can again go into the discussion about the pros and cons of it, but I believe the net effect of the benefits of pre-clearance are very clear, at least to me and to many others. But from a route development aspect, one of the things that Southwest Airlines, for example, said, and a lot of those primarily domestic carriers are saying, is that the U.S. pre-clearance opens a lot of opportunities in terms of slot availability because you're not using the prime international time slots. You now spread the load on the airport. You basically expand the size of your airport without laying a single brick. because the size of your airport is not just the building. The size of the airport is also the number of slots you have. How many aircraft are landing here at 6, 7, and 8 a.m. and 8, 9, and 10 p.m.? Almost none. Everybody is landing between 11 and 3 because those are the prime international slots that they have available. We need to start to target those earlier times because that helps you with your capacity. And much of this, Mr. Chairman, is not necessarily should not necessarily be the initiative of the airport. It is the country that should engage primarily with these third parties like airlines and international airports as well. Of course, in close collaboration, the Tourist Bureau, the airport, even to an extent the French side. Whatever stakeholders need to come together, but I believe that the government needs to take the lead in this because it's one thing for an airport to speak to an airline. It is another thing for official government officials like our Prime Minister and the Minister of Tourism meeting with these airlines and making sure that they understand that St. Martin wants to be a partner and we're a lucrative destination for them. And finally, this is something I always bring up in most of these meetings, but it is something that I see more and more why it is important for us to reconsider how we're handling this going forward. And to be clear, this is an opinion shared by myself and MP Marlin, faction leader of the NA, and both faction leaders believe. I don't know what the current situation is in terms of how we're handling our government-owned entities. I understand that the COM is the shareholder. I understand that the decision has not been to appoint shareholder reps. But what is the communication like? When I hear the minister say, for example, in trying to answer the question of MP Heyliger-Marten about, well, we just need a recent update, is it now that has to go through a whole channel to be able to just get a simple answer from the airport about an update? What is that communication like? Is it that there's a whole bureaucratic process in place just because the COM is a shareholder rep, and now ultimately then that's starting to affect me as a parliamentarian in being able to get the information? So some clarity on what has happened since then to make sure that with the airport in particular, but perhaps in general, that this cumbersome process of not having shareholder reps is not preventing us from getting the answers the people of St. Martin, the people's representatives, and the government needs in terms of what is happening with our government-owned companies. Let me just give a very clear example. The Minister of TIAT is here with the Prime Minister. A question is now posed regarding an update. Mr. Chairman, through you, is the Minister able to pick up the phone and call or text or email the holding board to be able to get that information? Or is it that then it has to go to the Secretariat and the COM and all of this? I just need to understand how is this happening in practice when important information, especially those posed by me as a member of Parliament, what is the information flow and communication between the government, the minister, and the airport? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Bryson. The next person on the list is MP Marlin, but he's absent. So we move on to the next one is MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. MP Sarah Westcott-Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, a good morning to you and our support staff. A good morning to my colleagues, to the two ministers present and their support staff, to all persons in the Tribune, as well as persons tuned in to this meeting. Mr. Chairman, I have to concur with my colleague in terms of having lost the thread of and for this meeting on the Princess Juliana International Airport. The meetings that were held, canceled, questions asked, and now we receive a July report from the airport. And I haven't checked into the report itself yet. We have received it. I'll read it and see if there's anything interesting in the update for the month of July 2023. Because, Mr. Chairman, and why do I say this? one of the questions back in some part of this meeting before was regarding the pre-clearance. Where do we stand? Not only where do we stand, what is government's position? This is not a question of this morning. This is a question going back to a previous part of this meeting. So I want to repeat it. I want to repeat it. There is no, I saw some numbers in the presentation just made, and I want to know if those numbers give an overview of where we stand with respect to the financing of the airport. So some of the numbers that I saw there, and again, I want to make it clear, I have the presentation, but I'm not going to try to listen to the minister read a presentation that was sent. Because the right way to have done this, since this is the presentation we would have gotten, was to send it to members of parliament before this meeting, so that when we come, we could have asked, based on that latest presentation that we got, we could have asked the questions. So I'm asking, is in the presentation, the issue of the financing of the airport, is that taken up? How much, when, over, under, is that taken up in the presentation? If not, could we have it from the minister or the ministers? I guess the Prime Minister is here in the capacity as shareholder, representative of the COM regarding government-owned companies. I tend to see that the Prime Minister is shaking her head. That is not the case. Then the question would be, in what capacity is the Prime Minister here? If it's not, that it's the COM's responsibility for these government-owned companies. So, pre-clearance, one, the whole financial scheme. And Mr. Chairman, of course, and I know not many persons like to hear this or these kind of remarks. There's a history behind the financing of the airport, clearly, right? So, is the minister aware of this? And does the minister feel that now the airport and its financing is really being embraced by the government of St. Martin? Is the project being embraced by the government of St. Martin? Mr. Chairman, we have a shareholder, namely the government of St. Martin, a shareholder of the government-owned companies, and also the Princess Juliana International Airport. Then we have, or maybe not have, a shareholder representative. Do we or not? If we still have a shareholder rep, what is the responsibility, what is the task, what is the role of the shareholder rep? So the minister representing the shareholder towards the airport. Then we have a holding, and then we have an operational company of the airport. And then, carrying the load of it all are the employees of the Princess Juliana International Airport. So shareholder, shareholder rep, holding company, operation company, and the personnel. How would the government ministers describe that interaction between those players? So from the employees, if you want to say employees up, or from the shareholder down, how is that interaction? This government has become known for using the term arm's length when it comes to government-owned companies at their own discretion, and other times apply finger length towards government-owned companies, all at their own discretion. So one time is no, they're so far away from us, we can't do, we can't ask, we can't see. Prime example is the company of GEBE. But that's for another meeting, because that meeting will be requested. And other times it's, look, no, as shareholder, we are the shareholder. We represent, and it's a government company, it's a people's company, so we can act, so we can give instructions. So what is the government's view as far as the Princess Juliana Airport is concerned regarding arm's length, yes, no, when, how? Put in the context of all of the players that I just mentioned. Mr. Chairman, looking at this issue of, bless you, looking at this issue of government's instructions or directives to airport, my question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Prime Minister. And I asked it yesterday to the Minister of ECYS. I asked it in the context of culture. I asked it to the Minister of VSA in the context of employment. And now I ask the Prime Minister through the Chairperson of Parliament, from whose hand a letter to government-owned companies came. And that letter suggests that government-owned companies do their utmost to employ St. Martiners / locals. And so regarding that, my question is, did such a letter also go to the Princess Juliana International Airport? And did it go to the holding or did it go to the operation? If it did it go to the holding or did it go to the operation company? Did the government itself develop a policy as far as it pertains to elevating, promoting, training St. Martiners / locals to hold managerial positions? If so, what is the policy of government? Or has government sent this letter to government-owned companies, if it went to all of them, because then some of the advices that the Parliament has received with respect to proposals of government to appoint persons in high positions at government-owned companies, then I asked myself, was that policy not applicable then? But we'll address the specific companies where government has done exactly the opposite to what it is telling the government-owned companies to do with respect to the employment of St. Martiners and locals. And then, of course, the overarching question in that context. So firstly, let me ask, can the Prime Minister, through the Chairperson of Parliament, share this letter with Parliament? Because then we can ask the questions directly. We can quote, thank you, Mr. Chairman, one more minute to go. We can quote from the letter. So could we get that letter? And then we're going to have the discussion on who the government has proposed for government-owned companies and whether they're following the same policy that they are asking government-owned companies to follow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. The next person is MP George Pantherplin. MP George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the Chair, again, the Griffier, my colleagues in Parliament, Honourable Prime Minister Sylvia Jacobs, and also the Minister of TIAT, Mr. Lambrix, Mr. Lacruz, those that are sitting in the tribune and those that are following. Mr. Chairman, time. Someone said, and I do not know who the author or the one that made a statement is, but it says that time is a great healer and time is a great revealer, Mr. Chairman. And the other day, I listened to a tape that was sent to me regarding a statement made by a former politician whose name I will not call at this moment. Mr. Chairman, what should not be taken for granted is the amount of work that has been done, Mr. Chairman, by the and in this case, the Minister of TIAT, in a short period of time that he has been in office. You see, it is interesting, Mr. Chairman, when you hear certain statements as to what is taking so long. Why did it take so long? Mr. Chairman, do not ask questions of which you already know the answers. Mr. Chairman, the 1st of November, I believe the departure hall would be ready, if I'm not mistaken. Departure hall, I don't want to mix up with arrival hall. It's too big, it's too different, it's two different sections. And Mr. Chairman, that would have been ready maybe a long time ago. But again, the politics, Mr. Chairman. And again, we always seem to forget the history as to how and why we are where we are today. So for those who are viewing and listening, I just want to give you a little brief. Oh, should I go there? I start and I decide. Mr. Chairman, one of the things I said when we had an issue, or still have the issue with the present CEO, I had said, why is it that as soon as that person was given a position, that things started to go upside down at the airport? Things were signed that would have financial consequences for us, but nobody seems to remember that. But I believe a colleague of mine is better versed in it because he's the one that really brought it to light, where the financial expenses are concerned. And I think it's important that if we can't question a member of parliament, unfortunately, well, it's good anyhow, as to what amounts of the airport is suffering up to now because of signed documents for work that is not done as yet, but still they're gaining interest on it and so on. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, a matter of delay, we didn't ask for the World Bank to come in. We didn't ask for Schiphol to come, Mr. Chairman. We didn't ask for some positions at the airport to ensure that a Dutchman from Europe sits there. I got to be clear because, you know, we are Dutch too, so-called. So these are the things, Mr. Chairman, that we should not forget, you see. My dad always taught me, you know, he was a very good boxer. He said, when you throw a jab or a right hand or a cross or whatever, make sure that something's coming back to you, so make sure you defend yourself as best as you can. So if you know you're going to get hit with something, please avoid it. And contrary to what someone said, I don't play politics. I just talk, I speak about the facts, because the people who are listening and viewing must get the true story, not their story, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, we have 10 minutes, and I don't think I have to use the full 10 minutes, but I want to say to the employees at the airport, I know they have been going through a very difficult time. I always said this, it was up to me, I'll send home the CEO of Standervoet, definitely, I would. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Very disrespectful individual. Extremely disrespectful, Mr. Chairman, but again, I don't have that power. And as someone said, hands off and hands on and fingers off. Mr. Chairman, when you have formal agreements signed, you have to have hands off, otherwise you're in trouble. Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to say to the employees, you know, you all are aware of what is going on. You all know. And don't allow it to be said that this government here, this minister here did X, Y, Z. You all know better than that. You all know who the culprit is, or the culprits are, Mr. Chairman. That is known. Let us deal with that. As things are going now, I am happy that we have some stability, because that's the only way we can get things done, and we're getting things done, Mr. Chairman. Let me say this in closing. As the airport continues to be developed, and my colleague, Bryson, gave a very good explanation as to what will happen in the future, I'm asking those persons at the airport, those workers, to bear with us, because definitely there is light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George Panthercliff. The next person is MP Gums. MP Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, Rifir, my colleagues, to the Minister and the Prime Minister and their support staff here with us today, and those in the Tribune, and those joining us online. Mr. Chairman, I just have two questions for the Minister of TEAT. Namely, is there any accounting being done by the project managers and management at PJIA regarding wastage? So, for example, too many materials ordered, materials being ordered with incorrect lengths or sizes and thus having to be cut down on the spot. Is all of this being tracked? Because normally with large projects like this that are managed by World Bank related entities, you do have tallying so that the actual amount spent on the reconstruction project can be identified. So an inventory of materials and a cost analysis performed. Because in the past at the airport, with previous directors, there's been money refinanced and it has gone missing with no accounting for where it went. And then my second question, the plan mentioned in the July 2023 report to address the loss of access to the French Antilles in Puerto Rico. Is this plan being drawn up solely by PJIA or in collaboration with the Tourist Office? And can anything further be shared about it to address the loss of that particular regional market? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Gums. The next person is MP De Wever. MP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, Prime Minister, Minister of TEAT and his support team, and my colleagues, viewing and listening public as well. Going to keep it brief, actually, because everyone's talking about an executive report that we received from the Minister of TEAT today, but it's only 4 pages, and the majority of it is filled with pictures, so it's actually really easy to review. So some of the topics were picked up by it. One of the things that I will say, just to read it for the listening public or viewing public, is a timeline of the construction. The timeline is a little inconsistent, because you talk about departure hall in October 2023, check-in December 2023, but when you go into the rest of the report, you see that the check-in is January 2024. So it's not December 2023, but January. So you might think that this is small little things that I'm looking at, but it's a big deal when you're talking about the high season for our airport, what people can expect. Because the reason that I bring it up is one of the things that I have kept the habit of is, since I left office, I've kept communication with not just managers here, but I've kept communication with regional managers of airlines. I've kept communication with corporate, and they're more than willing to give you answers on what's going on in the industry. And this is not proprietary information, but you need to keep your sort of ear to the ground to understand exactly what's happening in your country and why it is. And the reason I've had to do that is because I'm constantly being bombarded by taxi drivers, by restaurant owners, by hoteliers asking me what is going on. I'm a member of parliament, and yes, I have built up a relationship with stakeholders of our tourism industry, but I believe that everybody should be doing that is in that same industry, in this, whether you are in the Council of Ministers or you have been in that position beforehand. And one of the things that I kept getting for the last 4 months was what was going on with airlift. The biggest problem that we had was people were getting scared because of the fact that the ticket prices were so expensive, but then no one was getting any answers. So my whole suggestion again and recommendation is, don't rely on a inaccurate report like this to get your information. You need to maintain relationships with people in order to ensure that people are coming to your country. That's really the takeaway here that I want to leave through you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister of TEAT, as well as the Prime Minister, as they're both here. Because I'll tell you straight up, when I go into the report, it talks about the trends of what happened. Everybody was complaining this island to 2019 because that was when things were going back to normal after Hurricane Irma. And when you read the report, it's talking about aeronautical business. It says the first half of 2023 showed volumes 105% above the totals of 2019. However, the last 2 months performed below the levels of 2019. The exact reason for this has not been identified. That's problematic because you're an airport. You make your money based on who's coming through your airport. You make your money based on passengers coming in. So you read this report, I get worried because I'm like, what is going on here? And then it says, but the airlines have also planned for fewer aircraft in the region due to limited resources. Just get your story straight. Get your data, because your country is depending on airlift. While we talk about diversifying our economy demands that we have cash. That cash comes from an existing industry, which is our tourism sector. So get it together and get your communication going. Communicate with your stakeholders, because if you also have a conversation with the hoteliers, you will know that we are approaching 40% occupancy. So get the information in, because this is what our future is being determined on. We need to know that people are coming to our country. We need to know that people are flying in, that our hotels are occupied, so that the government coffers can be paid. When you see this report, I get worried that we're not getting the information that we need to tell our country, our people here, that we're good. We got things sorted. Because if you had communication, you would also know that we have the highest amount of airplanes coming in from Air France and KLM this year, but you don't have the same thing happening with the North American market. That's why communication is important. It's not proprietary information when you're in government. I go on to read, another factor is that our airport is already functioning at its maximum capacity of 1.5 million movements. To be honest, I don't know what to believe, because you tell me you don't know the reason why we can't get people, why we don't have airlift, why it's down the last 2 months. You tell me it's related to not having enough aircraft. Just give me information that's consistent, that I can trust. That's my issue with this report. Like I said, it's 4 pages, mostly pictures, hardly any words in it. So if you want me to review something like this for the meeting, I will go through it, because it's easy enough to read, but it's also very, very, very inconsistent. I took notice of what the MP next to me said when he questioned about communication with government-owned companies. Now, what really concerned me with that was the fact that it's a coalition member that doesn't understand what's happening in the government-owned companies. That's my issue, is that you should have an idea of what's happening with it. I'm just stating the obvious based on what I hear people saying. So when you talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, I'm not getting that comfort, because I see information lacking. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP De Wever. The last speaker on the list is MP Richardson. MP Richardson? No? Thank you, members of parliament. I will look to my right if minister is ready to answer the questions. Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, we would need just some short time, maybe a half an hour, just to review everything and make sure we have the correct answers before we go into responding.
So you need 30 minutes?
Please. If before, we will.
So as requested by the minister, we will adjourn the meeting till 12:15. Meeting adjourned till 12:15.
Good afternoon, once again, honorable members of parliament, minister present with us, and the viewing public. We are back for the meeting, this public meeting, in which the agenda point is a discussion of the general reconstruction of Princess Juliana International Airport. This was IS 188, dated November 14, 2022. Members, we had concluded the second round of deliberations on this topic, in which various questions were posed. The ministers requested approximately 30 minutes and have now returned with the answers to those questions. I believe we will first begin with the Minister of TIAT. Yes, so we will have the answers from the Minister of TIAT, followed by the Prime Minister. Minister Lambrix, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first question is from MP Heyliger-Marten concerning the contract of Mr. Mingo and the evaluations. His contract is set to end December 2024. There were 2 evaluations done, one in 2020 and one in 2021. In reference to, and the holding board is carrying out the due diligence concerning that. Concerning the temporary building for the arrival, this question was asked also by MP Emmanuel. The temporary building, it's not going to be a tent as Mr. Emmanuel referred to, it's more of a temporary prefab building, but both of you kind of overlapped. The cost of the building will be $3 million. That temporary building will be completed by end of September and beginning to be used by October. It was part of the overall project budget. The questions of MP Emmanuel. The airport discrimination where the bathrooms are concerned. Specifically, he mentioned Turkish workers compared to local workers. I was not aware of it, but I did look into it. There is a separation between restrooms, which is for office workers and construction workers. The office workers are set at about 30 people, I believe, and the construction close to 200. Seeing that they're construction workers, of course, you know, they're not dressed the same. They're working under different circumstances and in different conditions, so the bathrooms were separated in different areas, assigning everyone their own restrooms. I can confirm there are Turkish people working as office workers, but also as construction workers. So they also, as construction workers, would then have to use the restrooms assigned for construction workers. The resignation and local replacement of the COO. He did resign during his trial period. It was mentioned that he resigned for personal reasons. And at the moment, there is no recruiting being done. There is a prospect that is employed currently at the airport, and that is being looked into, and they are in discussions. Concerning Ms. Audrey Jack, discussions are ongoing and at the final stages. I can't dive too much into it because it is concerning a personal, personal information about, operational stuff. I can confirm that Ms. Jack has been receiving up until now her full salary, or her salary, sorry. The departure hall will be opened for usage by everyone. It is set to go online the 1st of November, as mentioned. The moving to put people outside in a tent and who will be going outside, I did answer this earlier in regard to Ms. MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten's question. It is not going to be a tent, it is more of a prefab actual building. It is going to be fully air conditioned. The immigration will move there. The full baggage claim area will move there. And of course, it will assist to continue the works in the arrival hall, keeping the schedule as is intended without delays. Moving on to MP Bryson's question concerning route development, concerning the last flight from Miami, concerning Delta, Atlanta Airport. I can confirm that as minister, within the first 3 months, I did reach out to all of the airlines that fly currently to St. Martin. They were actually quite happy that I reached out to them because what we are seeing today in St. Martin and with the flights coming in is definitely because of COVID. We can all know that. But it is also because of lack of communication from the Ministry of TIAT over the years that no one has really reached out to the airlines and done any follow-ups with them to confirm with them how the load factors are working, the conditions at the airport, what we're planning, what we're not planning. It was basically just an autopilot. I can confirm that we have been in discussion with Delta. We, myself actually, as Mr. Bryson, MP Bryson confirmed, it is good that we as ministers, especially of such a sensitive portfolio, reach out to these stakeholders, these airlines, and keep that dialogue going. Because if we don't, we are just drifting, you know, in the middle of the Caribbean Sea without any support. So like I said, they were quite happy. Most of the sentiments were, of course, because of the COVID and many pilots retiring, not going back into service, stewardesses, planes that were in order, etc., with backlogs, which is a worldwide issue. The airlines itself, with the flights that are coming to St. Martin, all of them have a load factor of over 90%, which is quite remarkable, but at the same time expected, because of course it's only one flight instead of 4, or 2 flights instead of 5, etc. But they have also all indicated to me they're very willing and very happy to have seen the response of the travelers and seeing that those load factors have been high, and they also agree that they want to add extra flights. But again, pending receiving new equipment, new staffing, training, etc. I can announce, but I won't announce the airline's name yet. There will be a press release on Monday, hopefully, letting the population know that we will be having increases in certain airlines from now 2 days a week or 3 days a week to full 7 days a week. These airlines will assist us to also deal with the high prices that are there. These are not necessarily airlines that have these extremely high prices, but they will assist those airlines that do to drive those prices down, because if they don't, of course, people will be taking optional routes and utilizing those extra flights. When it comes to the pre-clearance, I do believe personally it is a good idea. However, there was discussions in the past. I believe at the level of the U.S. government, it was stopped somewhere, that they said that they don't want any extra pre-clearance with any other countries at the moment. So that is a little bit beyond our control as it stands now. But I can definitely agree that it is something that would assist us with the flight planning and making sure that we get those flights that we cannot get now due to certain limitations. COM is the rep of the government-owned companies. That's the full Council of Ministers, 7 of us. I have been tasked as representative spokesman of the COM when it comes to, you know, responding to questions. As it comes to the airport, civil aviation also falls under the airport and works in collaboration with that. So of course that falls under the Ministry of TIAT. So that is again where I come into play. Either way, we would have to always, again, because of the good corporate governance, follow those streamlines of reaching out to the holding first and the operating. At the moment, how it is, there were some minor disagreements, but we understand now that any one of us can reach out to the airport and ask certain questions, of course, once it's within our purview. So that answers that. Moving on to MP Westcott Williams. The pre-clearance in the presentation, is the finances in it, cost, etc. No clear cost for the pre-clearance was ever really pinpointed. However, it was estimated that it would cost us approximately $90 million to get the whole thing set up, the facilities, the initial setup, and then an extra $8 to $9 million a year to keep it going. The financing of the airport, and is the project embraced? So this one was a little bit, for me, that I wasn't too clear if it was the project of the pre-clearance or not, but at the moment the pre-clearance is not part of the financing of the airport. Do we have a shareholder rep, and what are the responsibilities? So as I mentioned, the shareholder rep is the COM, and I did mention the responsibilities earlier, so that's the same. How would government describe the interaction between all of the employees and the players? Government, like, you didn't answer. Sorry? Oh, this is a, okay, yeah, this. Yes, PM will address that one. Government sometimes applies, so I believe that's also PM, that's part of that, no? Yes? A letter suggested to employ the St. that is also, the PM will address that one. Did the government develop St. as local to hold manager's position, or did government send that letter? This is all, so the PM will address those last questions. MP George was more of a statement that I saw. I didn't really get any questions from him. I will go on to MP Gums' questions. Is there any accounting being done for the project and the management regarding wastage? So extra materials, I guess, ordered, staying over. So a roll of cable, extra zinc, extra whatever it might be. A log is being kept by the airport. They do have a storage and warehouse facility where they do keep it. And it is being kept as spares or for future usage in case it is needed to have any of those materials. The second question was the plan mentioned in the July 2023 report to address the loss of access to the French Antilles in Puerto Rico. Is this plan being drawn up solely by the PJIA in collaboration with the tourist office, and can anything further be shared about this plan? So as the airport, they know their routes that they have. Definitely the St. Martin Tourism Bureau is in direct contact with the airport. At the airport, we have 2 route specialists. One is in-house, one is a third party. Ms. Susie Carter-Croma is the in-house specialist for route development. So she will be the one in contact with our St. Martin Tourist Bureau. And when it comes to these 2 particular routes mentioned, as everyone knows, Winner has just acquired 2 new aircraft. One is already in operation. Of course, Puerto Rico, everyone knows, was a favorite shopping stop for many locals here. And it's a long time out of service. So this was definitely one that the airline wanted to pick up, and they are working in close collaboration with the airport to start those routes. The next question was, or it was more statements from MP De Wever concerning what the economy is going through now, I guess, and the airlift currently on the airport, and the communication between the airlines. Me personally, coming from a tourism background, I see the very importance of this. I personally was a travel agent for many years. I worked in the airline industry for many years, and that was, again, one of my first things that I stepped into and got in contact with. In discussions with a few of them, it was actually quite surprising for me to hear that they were looking for this kind of communication a long time. Many ministers have been in the seat and never reached out to these stakeholders, to these airlines, to have these communications, these discussions. What we are seeing today, I need everybody as MPs that are sitting here, even my colleague minister, PM, my support staff, chairman, those listening out there, to know decisions are not made for today. There's planning that goes into these airlines, years, months, flight schedules, preparations. So what we are seeing today is not just because of COVID, but again because of lack of interest from many other ministers in the past that have not done this or not known to do this, and it has gotten us where we are today. So for sure I can announce, like I said, the extra airlift that is happening with one of the airlines. It'll be known to everyone on Monday. That is because of direct and quick steps that we have taken as a ministry and initiatives we have done this year to make sure that we have that airlift, and the reach that we have taken to get in contact with these airlines and letting them know, from my personal standpoint, that I apologize for these situations, and that, we do need the assistance of them, and they are key stakeholders, and we need their input and their full cooperation to get this moving. So we do have that. We had the first meeting with all the airlines. We have another meeting set up with them. We do it quarterly, is what I told them. So the next one was supposed to be this month, but because of Parliament and because of meetings, I don't try to schedule too many trips and try to stay in office to actually do some work, so it gets a little bit difficult sometimes, but we do have a trip planned to go and meet them next at their offices, and to really show them that we do mean business and we do value their airlift and their support that they give us, and that we are willing to do whatever we have to do to ensure that continuation happens, and that we only strengthen it moving forward, and that collaboration stays there and that communication also stays there moving forward. And I think that answers all the questions that I have received. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lambrix. We will now go to the Prime Minister, who is, as we saw, there are some additional questions that would be answered by the Prime Minister. Then we'll have opportunity for clarification. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to one and all. This is the first time I'm actually speaking in a meeting, so I'd like to say a hearty good afternoon to the members of Parliament, the Griffier, of course, support staff of Parliament, my colleague Minister, Mr. Lambrix and his staff, and my support staff as well, and all those who are following also to support us in this endeavor to respond to Parliament in a timely fashion, based exactly on the time that has elapsed since this meeting was first called. Indeed, the urgency has elapsed and things are better under control, which I'm happy the Minister has been able to convey. And the few questions related to corporate governance and in general, the Minister did go into it to some extent. I can elaborate on, but before doing so, I want to take this opportunity to extend to the people of St. Martin that we must continue to collaborate and bringing peace and unity to this country as we see that, and I think one of the ministers mentioned this in the Council of Ministers meeting lately, that the manner in which we speak to each other and then tell young people how they should do it plays a big role. So we here in Parliament need to set that example as well, having respect for differing opinions and still being kind and compassionate to each other. And I think with that being done across the board in our society and community, people will feel freer to express their opinions, even if it may differ from others, and be themselves. There's a lot we're facing as a country, and so I wish all much strength as we deal with the challenges, especially the family of Justice Peterson and all those who are impacted. We as government are working diligently with all stakeholders to, of course, try to mitigate future occurrences. The question that was specific for me came, I believe, through MP Westcott Williams, related to the different layers and roles in government, shareholder, who's shareholder, representative, the government-owned companies, and their various supervisory boards, management boards, etc., and how they actually interact with each other. What I think should be made very clear, Mr. Chairman, is that the roles of each layer are clearly defined. And over the past 2 years, this government has spent quite some time and investment in ensuring that more awareness is brought about the roles. Because over the years, we've heard a lot of things that have gone not how they should have. And as a result, we now have all types of chambers and all types of scrutiny on us. And as a result, we now have to make the necessary adjustments and changes and make sure that the awareness is there. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chairman, I asked my staff to remind me as to the last time I spoke on this here in Parliament, and it was on January 20th, I believe, of this year, where I, based on information provided by our corporate governance advisors in the company of Mr. Van Kunneman, Van Epps, and Van Doorn, his company, and all of the persons who have been working with us to improve corporate governance. The roles of all the different layers were explained. And of course, while we may be challenged by what we want to know vis-a-vis what we need to know and what we have the authority to know, we must still try to live up to the expectations of the roles we play. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chairman, we also had a workshop for which some of the members of Parliament also attended in terms of corporate governance, and we've been asked, the symposium, to organize more of that. So I look forward to more members of Parliament, aspiring politicians, as well as aspiring board members, to continue to upgrade yourselves in exactly what the role and responsibility is. And all members of Parliament are in possession of that presentation which I made. And I'll remind you, it was done on January 20th, 2023. So that info is in your P drive, is in your emails as far as I am concerned. And so I don't think, especially to very, very experienced members of Parliament, that I need to explain how the layers interact. Member Minister Lambrix did mention the role we play as shareholder. We deal with the holding companies, and we can ask them whatever we want to ask them, and they will filter, definitely filter what we are allowed to know. We receive reports on a regular basis, and as shareholder, actually we should be meeting twice a year. That is what it should be. But of course, when there are challenges, we will question more, we will send letters, etc., approved by the Council of Ministers as the shareholder. And as Minister Lambrix explained, he's the point of contact. He's the one that is allowed to contact, keeping myself and the Secretariat in the copy so that we're aware as a Council of Ministers of all communications. Regardless to whether it is a by Landsbesluit appointed shareholder rep to represent the council or not, the responsibility still lies with the shareholder rep, which is the Council of Ministers. So I just wanted to clarify that, and that we will continue to share awareness and workshops on what those authorities are. One other way I can respond in how government is dealing with improving corporate governance is in the recently executed one-year-long corporate governance training, where we purposefully highlighted young local professionals. And we can go into the definition of what is a local, but for St. Martin, we know we're talking about whether you're born here or not, persons, we already have it regulated also within our study financing. You leave here, you have a Dutch passport issued here in St. Martin, you've spent 5 years in education here in St. Martin. So it's not as strict as some may like, but we know who are the belongers of St. Martin, and those always have priority within government hires as well as with government-owned companies. And the letter that we sent to Winier, I did get a confirmation from the airport that they also received a letter. I'm not sure if it's the same letter, because these are topics that come up in every shareholders meeting, that is a priority of this government, and I'm sure all governments that will follow, that there is priority given to our people, whether they are here or in the diaspora. And even in the country reforms that we are currently busy with, we are ensuring that it goes out. Our plenipotentiary minister's office also sends out vacancies to the students and persons living abroad so that they have opportunities, and we encourage them to be the first to apply for said jobs. Of course, when someone of St. Martin descent or affinity cannot be found, then you have no other choice. And those persons always get a contract. And in the meantime, now we're asking, even when you do that, to ensure that you're looking for alternatives, whether it's to train them, bring them up to the position to be able to take over, because we don't only want to have management, local management in name. We want competency, we want to ensure professionality, and we want to ensure to keep our government-owned companies viable because of the importance of the services they render. I have no problem sharing the letter that was sent on with Parliament, and once I get back, I will ensure that that is done. And of course, government's policy, as I mentioned before, has not changed in terms of locals first. I think that was it, Mr. Chairman. If there are any further clarifications, we look forward to hearing.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And while the Prime Minister was answering, the Minister did indicate to me he did have one other question that he had to respond to. Minister, you have the floor. Yeah.
Sorry, yes. I did have one more, I think, question for MP De Wever that mentioned the inconsistencies of the timeline with the completion of the airport. In the report that I shared with Parliament today for July, it does says that the completion of the check-in area is January 2024, and I believe there was also some communication in the past that it would have been December 2023. The December 2023 is still the goal. It wasn't really, we said January because sometimes there are issues, when you move into something new or new equipment, that something can go wrong, and they need some time to, make sure to tweak it. But the goal is still for December. We didn't want to announce that, but we kept it as January. But since it's out there now, we put it out there also. It will be in December for the reopening of the check-in. It was more of a, if you want to be a little humorous, Christmas surprise, but yeah. Yeah, sorry, but that is to answer that question, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. With that, members of Parliament, you've received the answers to questions posed in the second round, and we do have opportunity for clarifications to the answers that were provided in the second round. I have MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten as indicated, and she will go first. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the Minister of TIAT for the answers to the questions posed, and also the Prime Minister. Mr. Chairman, I just have a few small clarifications. It was not clear on the evaluations. I know for a fact that the evaluation of 2021 that was done earlier, I think that was on this with the supervisory board. I'm well aware of that evaluation. That's a while back. But the evaluation that's being done now is by the holding. Is that so? It's the holding that's conducting that evaluation, and is it in conjunction with the motion that was passed? And what exactly is the evaluation? Is it exact same evaluation? What is the content of that evaluation that the holding is conducting of the CEO? Also, Mr. Chairman, the prefab. The prefab section there that they're busy with, it's September. We all know it's September. It's the height of the hurricane season. And if, God forbid, a Cat 4, Cat 5 comes, how soon, how fast, or is it something stable that won't become a projectile at the end of when a hurricane hits? Is it something stable as there? Is it something that we can dismantle quickly? Have they taken that into consideration, seeing that it's this month? Lastly, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Audrey Jack, I know through you, Mr. Chairman, that there's not much that can be divulged, but it's public knowledge right now that there's a court docket where the airport, PJIA, has taken Audrey Jack to court. And seemingly it's for severing ties with Ms. Audrey Jack. And it's unfortunate, through you, Mr. Chairman. It's very, very unfortunate that she has to endure this, you know, and it's a well-known secret, Mr. Chairman, why this has happened. A member of parliament in here screenshot a conversation she had in confidence with him, and that was sent to the CEO. But the CEO can't take names. He don't like when somebody call him a name, but he could call names though. I have a fundamental problem with that. And I'm telling you, I'm gonna just leave this here with you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, you. That we can have a beautiful airport come next year, whenever the date is. That's if they don't extend it again. But if that environment remains like this, it's on this government. This is the government to blame that has protected this CEO. They go together. Okay, you don't think right now at this point in time, you're saying, but why are the unions not kicking up? Why are they not kicking up, Mr. Chairman? Why? Because everyone's scared, everyone's victimized. I speak to employees daily, and they get threatened, and they're being victimized. And if this government allowed this person to stay here another year, then the onus is on this government. A Mingo again? So now we're gonna allow a Mingo in the airport, and we want another Mingo in this government? Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry, but it's on this government.
Thank you. And next we have MP Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, in reference to the pre-clearance, in response to the price and cost from the minister, there was 3 scenarios presented for pre-clearance, 3 scenarios. And Mr. Chairman, the State Department never said that pre-clearance was off of the books. That was never said. The Prime Minister is responsible for bilateral agreements. The former Prime Minister, William Allen, have met with the State Department many times. Mr. Chairman, I would like to know if the Honorable Minister can clarify the price for the 3 scenarios given for pre-clearance. In addition to that, I would like to know, concerning pre-clearance, have the Prime Minister ever met with the State Department concerning, you know, anything whatsoever in relations to pre-clearance? Mr. Chairman, the Minister indicated how there was transfer of traffic lost. How much money did that translate to? How much money did that translate to? And if you have to compare it to what is needed in terms of investing in pre-clearance, how much is that? How much is that, Mr. Chairman? Because, Mr. Chairman, again, we was right there to the brink, because we was accepted, approved for pre-clearance. The Dutch government wasn't. In addition to that, you yourself, Mr. Chairman, you yourself, been on a committee discussion, Mr. Chairman, with the same gentleman who was operating pre-clearance on the airport in Aruba, in favor of pre-clearance and everything. In that discussion, and that panel discussion with you, Mr. Chairman, he was in favor of pre-clearance again too also. Here in St. Martin, he's against pre-clearance. Mr. Chairman, the United People's Party holds the ministry, TIAT, that's supposed to be responsible. The Prime Minister gave her wishy-washy scenario as to why the minister doesn't hold the whole grasp of the airport with shareholder and calm this and who's responsible, all sort of things. That's just want to hold on to power. That's all it is, really. Because when it's convenience, like MP Westcott make mention, it's hands off. And when it's not, it's direct. Mr. Chairman, the question is, again, can the minister substantiate the difference between the three scenarios and the cost? Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Emmanuel. Members of Parliament, we have a meeting that was to start at 1 p.m. Even if, I don't know, unless the ministers are able to go directly into answering the questions right away, which is what I would require, else I would have to adjourn this meeting in order to make the time that we have for 1:30. I'm going to adjourn for 1 minute. Good afternoon, members, and welcome back to this meeting. We'll have the Prime Minister answering first for the clarifications posed. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Minister will answer the questions of MP Heyliger, but I wanted to clarify something because I whispered it to the Minister and maybe it came across not clear, so I'll clarify related to the holdings rule where the evaluation is concerned. So based on our request back in 2020, the evaluations of the management was done. That was the 2020 evaluations. That had to continue on a yearly basis. So in our update, we only found 2 evaluations that had been done, and so I asked the holding, we have asked as a Council of Ministers, the holding to follow up with the operating board as to where they are with the other evaluations. They do not do, the holding company will not do evaluations. That is a role of the supervisory board of the operating company, and they have to live up to that due diligence. As it relates to the role of the Prime Minister and pre-clearance, we've answered this question several times, Mr. Chairman, that the government of St. Martin is still very much in favor of pre-clearance. When COVID hit, the State Department was minimizing because of the Ukraine, not when COVID hit. With the Ukraine war, they were minimizing expansion. So they asked to put a hold on that process. We are still very much interested and awaiting their, let's say, willingness to start back that conversation now that the economies are getting back up. Even though the war is still on, they were minimizing, spreading their personnel too thin. So prioritizing homeland and, of course, their southern border. It does come, it has a human resource aspect for them. And in my discussions with the ambassador as well as the counselor, it remains a topic of discussion, which we will revisit as soon as the State Department is ready to move forward with that. The minister will clarify on cost, etc. And I just wanted to make one more thing very, very clear. We are operating within the confines of the law and good corporate governance. So members may find it wishy-washy or not, but it is the fact that we have a lawful state. And people like to say St. Martin isn't a real place for these types of reasons. We have times when questions are asked, PM, what are you doing about something? And when you explain the limitations, no, you should be doing something. The most we can do is ask questions just like you and demand answers. And we can hold those who we hold accountable. They in turn have to do the same. And that is what I continue to pledge to do, to uplift the standards of operations on St. Martin.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Next, Minister Lambrix.
Thank you. So the first question about the evaluation, I think the PM touched on it and explained it quite well. The second question was about the hurricane season being on now and now putting up this temporary structure. It's a prefab structure, but it is a steel structure. It is properly bolted down on a proper foundation that has been built for it. It is also rated up until a category 3. So it is not something that we would have to really take down. I mean, many homes, many buildings, we don't know what category 3 even holds these days and how the storms are going. But it is a permanent kind of structure that will be taken down basically when is needed. But it is a proper structure, not a tent, and not something that can just easily be blown away. It is bolted down. It is properly put in place. The second set of questions from MP Emmanuel, those are quite lengthy kind of questions because I don't have those 3 scenarios. I would have to read through them and get that proper answer for you. When it comes to the traffic loss, that is also something, again, I would have to go into the calculations and to see what exactly that amounts to that you have asked. It is a good question, but it is something I'm asking, if possible, that I can put in writing back to you, or we would have to come back and answer those because it's not something 1, 2, 3 that can be, and I don't want to give wrong information. Thank you.
Minister, would you be able to provide that answer, let's say, within a week, so that the MP has a time frame? How long? A week?
Leave by, yes, a week. A week is good.
Yes, a
week
week?
is good.
Okay, so Minister, be reminded to send the answers to those 2 questions on the calculation, the scenarios for pre-clearance and the loss of the statistics
Traffic
related
loss.
to traffic.
Correct. Thank you.
Understood.
Will do. Thank you.
Ministers, I thank you for your participation in this meeting. Members of Parliament, with that, we have come to the end of this public meeting of Parliament. There are no further clarifications and there are no motions or there is no legislation for it to be voted on. So I want to once again thank all of you for your participation. We will be going straight into the next public meeting right after this. Meeting closed.